I had a thriving career as a writer, editor, journalist for decades, working for some very big publications. That all went away when COVID raised its ugly head. At that time, I had friends who were telling me, Peter, we are good and sick of hearing about that memoir you're going to work on one day. It's COVID time. Get to work on it, you jerk. And I was like, okay, friends, I'll get to work on it. But the funny thing that happened when I was writing it was that I just decided that there were certain passages that would do well if I did some cartoony, funny artwork sketches with them. And it just opened up a whole door in my career for me to incorporate artwork in the writing that I do. And, before I knew it, I found that I had animator, commentator gigs for NPR. And I was doing a column for the Colorado Sun, which is also a cartoon column. It's just been a huge breakthrough for me and means that I'm having a lot more fun at work than I did when I was a health editor.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus On-Air. I am, again, your host, Mike Hoffman, and today I am joined by editor, writer, illustrator, animator, co-author, radio host, TV guest, speaker, editorial consultant, journalism lecturer, Peter Moore. Peter, how you doing today?
I'm busy, as you can tell. I do all that stuff.
Yeah, well, how'd you find time to talk to me?
I don't know. Is it over yet?
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Stay tuned for our next episode. Yeah, but no, I do appreciate you taking the time to come on. I actually really do enjoy talking to people who, are kind of into so many different things that kind of give us the ability to move around a little bit. So I do,
Sure.
Like I said, I do appreciate the variety of what you do. What's the phrase? I'm trying to think of the phrase. Multi-hyphenate. What was that?
That is. I'm so hyphenated, man. I don't know which way to turn at any moment. But, it's a product of having a long life and career. Yeah. You get to do a lot of different things, which is, part of the fun of it.
Yeah. So if I had to have you, of all those things I mentioned, if I had to have you say, well, yeah, but at the end of the day, this is really inside what I am, which one would it be?
I would say I'm a writer and illustrator. Those are the things that I love to do. That's what's taken over my career right now.
All right, there you go. I mean, from a young age, that was a passion early on?
Actually, it was the weirdest thing. I think it may be a symptom of long COVID because I had a thriving career as a writer, editor, journalist, for decades, working for some very big publications. And, that all went away when COVID raised its ugly head in 2020. But at that time, I had friends who were telling me, Peter, we are good and sick of you hearing about that memoir you're going to work on one day. It's COVID time. Get to work on it, you jerk. And I was like, okay, friends, I'll get to work on it. But the funny thing that happened when I was writing it was that I just decided that there were certain passages that would do well if I did some, cartoony, funny artwork sketches with them. And it just opened up this whole door in my career for me. To incorporate artwork in the writing that I do. And, before I knew it, I found that I had, animator, commentator gigs for NPR. Yeah. And I was doing a column for the Colorado Sun, which is also a cartoon columnist column. So I guess I'm a columntoonist for the Colorado Sun. And, it's just been a huge breakthrough for me and means that I'm having a lot more fun at work than I did when I was a health editor.
Yeah, so I saw you were with Men's Health magazine, which is obviously, as you mentioned, a huge magazine. So were you focusing on any area, or was it a general just editor?
I was, I was the editor of the magazine, which meant that I had, a lot of personnel duties and annoying budget meetings to sit in. Yeah. But what I would do is just, when an assignment came along that was too tempting for me to give up to somebody else, I would just glom onto it myself because, hey, I was the editor. I could do whatever I wanted. So that's how, I pitched the Obama White House on, hey, I really ought to come in and interview Barack and Michelle for cover stories in Men's Health and Women's Health. And, I was shocked to find that they said, okay, yes, you can do that. And then, one day Matt Damon's publicist called up and said, hey, by any chance, would you like to go to India with Matt Damon for a week to visit his water.org villages where he was providing, clean water to the people of these little villages in India. And it was like, yeah, I wanted to do that.
Yeah,
So
let me check my schedule. What celebrity am I with next week? Okay, Matt Damon, that works. Yeah.
yeah, I'll be able to pencil them in for now. Let me know. But
Yeah.
it's just like that's been, a great part of my journalism career was that, back in the day, you could actually make a living at it and, send your kids to college and stuff like that, which I did. But then, the kids went to college, they expressed no interest in returning back home. And, that's when my wife and I escaped to move to Colorado, which I love. Living out here and also, changing up what the mix of the work I do is. And that's, it's an enormous privilege to be able to do that. And I'm just lucky that I was able to relaunch at my advanced age.
So I want to talk about the White House experience because I've always found that kind of stuff fascinating. So you get the okay. So you're going to travel to the White House to meet with them. So just kind of walk us through that process when you just kind of show up at the gate, and how you get from the gate into wherever you met them.
The funniest thing one of the funny things about this was, it was just like a whim. I was sitting at my desk. I was about to go out for a run because when you work at Men's Health, that's what you do at lunch.
You're supposed to run.
And I just thought, oh, you know what? I'll just send a note to the White House press office and propose, Barack and Michelle, both very fit, healthy people, propose them for men's health and women's health. I didn't ask anybody's permission. I just sent it off, went out for my run, come back in, and there's already a response to the White House saying, yes, we want to do that. And I think it was not because I'm a charming fellow, but because especially Barack needed more support from men at the time. So that was the stunner there. But then, fast forward, 6 months of sweating it out because we had these publication deadlines for the, we wanted to put the president on the cover of the September issue. It was right when Obamacare was going through. So there was like rife with health issues that were important to guys. But it wasn't until it was like, I got notification on a Friday that the following Tuesday I would be in the White House talking to the president. And it was like, that's a moment when you pull your hair out and think, oh, yeah, don't they know who they're talking to? I mean, obviously, you're not going to pull your hair out, but you know what I'm saying. I was
thinking the same thing, but thank you for that. Yeah.
It was a stressful moment. So then I find myself, that park that's always filled with protesters, whoever the president is. I was sitting on a park bench staring at the White House thinking, I can't believe that I'm going to go walk up to that little building and say, hi, I'm Peter Moore here for a meeting with the president. It was like,
they're expecting you. Yeah. It's like,
So I did, and it worked, the imposter syndrome in full throbbing thrust. So eventually, and I make my way across the yard of the White House inside that giant fence, and the press people escort me upstairs into the area of the White House where the Oval Office is. So I'm sitting in there kibitzing with these friendly people who work in the press office, and then suddenly one of them gets a phone call, and it's like, oh my God, the president is ready for you, Peter. And it's like, deep breath. So I start walking down this hallway. It's lined with busts of, presidents through history. And at the very end of this long hallway, I can see this lanky black man, reclining against a desk, talking with, the secretary. And I think, yep, that's Barack Obama. All right. So the longest 100-yard walk of my life. President stands up, shakes my hand, and he says, nice to see you again. Because I had, in fact, interviewed him once on his campaign plane 2 years before that. And, obviously his press person set him up for that. But it's still, I mean, for the president to say that to you is very meaningful. And then he stands up and gestures toward the open door of the Oval Office. Now, I mean, I've seen it on the West Wing, and it looked really cool there. But, as far as walking through that door, in this room that is very familiar to all of us. We all run those mental pictures of, John F. Kennedy sitting at the Resolute desk. And, just over the course of a whole lifetime, you see those photographs, but I personally never put myself in it. But the president shows me over to the chair where, where where President Trump has been yelling at various other
Right, the two chairs
dignitaries.
at the end by the, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there. The president sits down in a chair next to me, and I'm looking at his face and this ancient clock that's right. It was probably Thomas Jefferson's clock
Yeah.
that was right over his head. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got 20 minutes to ask the most important and most powerful person on the planet a bunch of questions. And it was just like, oh my goodness, here we go. And, it all went by in a snap. But, after that, they showed me out, expelled me onto the street. And I'm thinking, did that even happen?
Yeah.
But I had the recording, so evidently it did. And was able to write a good story about Obamacare for men's health, which, was itself was a whole trip.
So when you're sitting with him in the Oval Office, is anyone else with you in there? Is it just the two of you?
Oh yeah, it's crowded with people who could tackle me if I went for him.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there were two of his press officers there, and they were. If things go awry, and if I was all, if I started to be rude or ask stupid questions or whatever, there were people there to corral me and throw me in the street. But I had a pretty clear agenda of what I wanted to go through because there were a lot of It was one of the legacies of my life working as an editor at Men's Health is that I realized what bad shape men are with their mental health, physical health, how they take care of themselves, how often they go to the doctor. The president himself at that point was quitting smoking, so we had that to talk about. So, it was a great talk. He's a thoughtful man. I tried not to be too dazzled and get the stuff I needed for my story, which I did.
Wow. And then you're done, you say goodbye, and you're out in 2 minutes.
Yeah, so it was about half an hour all told that I was hanging out in the White House. But I, in the back of my mind, I knew that, oh, right, next week I'm coming in to talk to Michelle. So that, it was just like, it wasn't over yet. I still had another high stress moment to talk to the first lady. And, Michelle Obama is a very smart woman, graduated high in her law school class at Princeton. You don't want to screw up when you're talking to the first lady either.
No.
So this was like, a freaky high pressure moment in my life as a journalist, and also looking back on it, one of the most fun things I ever did. And, Michelle was quirky and charming in her own way. And I also, I can't remember the name of the Obama's dog, but at one point, I was, walking in the anterooms of the White House, and the dog licked my hand, and Sasha gave me a shy little wave. So I felt like I knew most of the family by that point. That's
right. So where did you meet with her? Like, where in the White House was your...
If I was a smarter person, I'd be able to say, oh, that was in the Lincoln Room or whatever. It was in one of those super fancy, super cool, decorated with antique furniture, like with signs on it. Do not sit on this chair. It's 400 years old kind of things. And that's where, Michelle and I were quite cozy sitting on a couch together with her press people hovering around naturally. But, talking about a different raft of issues. She was at that point setting up that cool organic garden on the White House lawn. I'm sure it's been torn out by now, but it was a sweet little spot that they were using the proceeds from that garden to feed people in the White House, which I thought was super charming. And I picked up an apple off of Michelle's desk at one point, and I thought one day I'm going to plant Michelle Obama's apple tree in my backyard.
Yeah, there you go. Listen, those are, regardless of how the story came out, those are just, you talk about like life moments, and that's incredible to have. Not only one time, you got to go back a second time.
Yeah, and we actually that year, not that I'm taking full credit for it or anything, but that was one of the factors that, the National Magazine Awards are a big thing in the magazine industry. And that year, Men's Health beat out the New Yorker for the top award of general excellence. So it's like, okay, I contributed to that a little bit and helped out, which is something you want to do as a journalist.
Well, I would think for sure that played a major impact because, when you think about who would your dream person be to get for an interview, I think the president of the United States, regardless of who it was, would probably be on the top of the list.
Yeah, it was. And then what was it? It must have been about 4 years later, they laid me off. So whatever, it's like you go through some great moments and then eventually your head ends up on the chopping block like anyone else's. And, it freed me
Yeah.
up to do all the other fun stuff I'm doing now. So whatever, go ahead and fire me. I don't care.
So let's talk about what you're doing now. So you kind of talked about it before. So now you're a combination, cartoonist, and columnist kind of thing. So where are you getting your ideas or inspirations now?
It's funny how this all began because, I launched a Substack, and Substack is a great thing for writers right now because,
Yeah.
I don't have the whole mechanism of a magazine sitting in front of me with all the people that you have to please when you're a magazine editor. It's just like, hey, what do I enjoy? What am I thinking about? So, I launched my Substack a few years ago, and recently it has taken off. So I've got more than 12,000 subscribers at petermoore.substack.com, which is, in the Substack world, that's a pretty big deal. And so I'm thrilled with that. And it's a ratification of what I'm doing now, which is, writing and illustrating. But once I had launched that, all of a sudden I had a credential so I could approach the Colorado Sun, which is a pretty big deal in Colorado. It's, it's got about 20 million page views a month. So people are really turning to it for their Colorado news. So I pitched them on, Colorado as a state and Coloradans are all kind of up themselves as far as, oh, we live in Colorado. Aren't we fancy? Don't we have the best outdoors? Don't we have the best culture anywhere? And I thought, in a place that is kind of self-satisfied that way and impressed with itself, it would be really fun to take it down a peg in cartoons. And so I pitched the editor of the Colorado Sun. It's like, I gestured at my Substack. I'm a big deal here. I would like to do an illustrated column that makes fun of Colorado and Coloradans, the things that they're interested in. So the very first one I did, it's a tradition in Colorado at the end of every September to go out into Rocky Mountain National Park and watch the elk rut, which is really just a fantastic invasion of the privacy of the elk as they're out there mating, and where they're taking pictures is that the rudest thing ever. So I came up with a series of cartoons based on the elk rut being the biggest invasion of privacy in history. And they found it funny. The readers liked it. And it just set off a succession for me of cartoon columns that I do, making fun of things that Coloradans love most. And a lot of things that I do. The most recent column I did for them was making fun of Red Rocks, which is our big, beautiful concert venue just west of Denver. But there are a lot of things that are weird about it, which I, ground into the dirt in my column for the Colorado Sun last week. So that was the big start for me. And then people at Front Range NPR heard or saw my work in the Colorado Sun, and pretty soon I was doing commentaries and animations for them too. So those are the pillars of what I do now. The most fun I have because they combine my writing and my artwork. But I still do a lot of freelancing for Backpacker magazine. I write for AARP, the magazine. I do a lot of freelancing. Colorado Life is another outlet.
So keep that up.
Yeah, you bet. As long as they pay me, I'll keep doing it. But yeah, it's not the same as the career I used to have, like reporting to an office and being a big deal and all that. But it's also a lot looser and more geared toward what I want to do and what I'm interested in and what I find funny. And that's not a bad way to finish the swing if you're taking a career.
Well, listen, I mean, as you said, your kids are out, they're on their own way. So now the not knowing anything about your situation, your week-to-week paycheck isn't necessarily as important as your happiness, your creative freedom, your joy in what you're doing at this point.
Yeah, and I was just very lucky to have had a long career in magazines back when being in magazines paid. I wrote some New York Times bestsellers for other people. I was writing other people's books. I was a ghostwriter. And I made a lot of money at that because I was leeching off of their fame to get my payday, which is, not a bad way to go if you can work it out. So that was a lot of fun and made me some money, allowed me to pay those tuition bills, and also sprung me to Colorado when I needed to get out of Dodge when I was laid off from Men's Health.
Yeah, so walk me through that concept of ghostwriting. I mean, I know what ghostwriting is, but how much of a ghost are you? Meaning, is there any credit at the end of the day besides the paycheck? You
Uh,
know, I write a book. You're my ghostwriter. Is that book coming out on the shelves written by Mike Hoffman, or is it, co-written or anything like that, or is it a situation by situation thing?
hey, it depends on how much you pay me. I'd be happy. It is an important credential to get the, by Mike Hoffman with Peter Moore, because then
Right.
my name is big on that subject. And if the book is a success, people will know that I did all the work.
Sure, of course.
But I have done deals where somebody said, I don't want anybody to even know that you exist. And I said,
Mhm.
that's fine. And that'll cost you X amount extra
Yeah.
because that credential is important for me. But if you pay me more, I don't have anything to do with this. And the dirty secret of my ghostwriting career is I never cared one bit whether or not my name appeared on the book because it wasn't my book. It didn't come from
Right.
me really.
Well, it really
So
was.
it was just a negotiating ploy that I
Yeah, of
used
course.
that was often successful, made me a lot more money, and it involved me giving up something that I didn't really care about. But the basis of this, I think, I didn't even realize I was going to be headed for a career as a ghostwriter. But when I was a kid in college, like I'd be reading, I was an English major naturally, and I'd be
Mhm.
reading a Dickens novel. I would fall asleep and think I was still reading it. So I was actually producing text from a Dickens novel in my dreams, which blows my mind. But it also makes me aware that I'm capable of taking on somebody else's persona and voice in my writing.
Yeah.
I'm sensitive to that, and I can reproduce it. So more than once, the people I was ghostwriting for would say to me, "Hey, Peter, you do me better than I do me," which is the basis for a good ghostwriting career.
Mhm. So, without telling me who, because obviously that would defeat the purpose of you being ghostwriter, what kind of books were you ghostwriting for? Like, were
One
they
of the yeah one of the most
biographical, or they?
Yeah, one of the most striking ones that I ever wrote was that I was working with so he was a uh, mid 40s gay black man who was kind of a an exercise guru type, which made sense coming out of Men's Health magazine. That's how I hooked up with him. But
Yeah, of course.
that and that whatever I was, 55-year-old white middle-aged guy could you know talk to this 40-year-old gay black man and achieve mind meld to the point where I could write in his language and his idiom.
Mhm.
Um, was a lot of fun to take that on.
Yeah.
I could hear his voice in my mind because I'd spoken with him so much, interviewed him so many times, and that was like such a cool realization I had that it really I can I can talk to anybody. I can pick up their vocal ticks, how they express
Mhm.
themselves, how they like to talk, and I can translate that into prose. And that's a valuable skill, and I was paid well for it. And I'm really grateful I was able to do it.
So, again, I'm sure this varies too, but how long a process is that from when, before you even start writing? Like you said, you're probably spending a lot of time with them, learning about them, from beginning to end. You're talking 6 months to a year?
Yeah, well, the that one book I was talking about was about a 2-year process. But
Wow.
then another time, my boss at Men's Health came to me and said, "Hey, we really want to crash out this book from the CEO of Weight Watchers. Can you get a book done in 6 weeks?" And I wrote
Mhm.
75,000 words in 6 weeks, and it immediately went to the printer. So it was like, when I need to be fast, I can be fast, especially if there's
Yeah.
a big pile of dollars at the end of the finish line there. I will race
Yeah.
to go grab those dollars.
Of course. Well, that's why you're doing it. I mean, I know you genuinely enjoy writing, but I assume you enjoy writing a lot more when they're chasing some money at the same time.
Well, it kind of depends. I mean, my career right now isn't about the money, because
Right.
I'm lucky enough to have enough my wife and I can live happily here in Colorado with,
Yep.
based on what I've earned already. So, I'm enjoying what I'm doing now more than I ever have, and earning about as much as I did, in my first job out of college. Um, so, money down, enjoyment up. There are different times in your life when you need the money and you can take
Agreed.
less enjoyment.
Yeah,
So I directed my career toward where it needed to be at that time in my life. When my
yeah,
kids were applying to college, it wasn't a time for me to go off on a lark and decide I was a humorist. It was time
right.
to burrow in, do the things that would pay, and with any luck,
Yeah.
see them through what they needed to go to college.
Yeah, no. So how are you spending your free time now? You travel a lot. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, it's when you work as a writer and cartoonist, I'm always writing and cartooning, no matter where I am. So,
Right.
my wife and I just went on a Road Scholar trip to Costa Rica, and I was
Nice.
posting on my Substack, while we were over there. But because I'm writing about things I'm enjoying doing now, what I'm seeing, what I find funny about where I am,
Yeah.
um, that's all part of the travel experience for me now.
Hmm.
So, in one sense, I never take any time off because I'm always posting, always
Sure.
writing, always focused on what would make a good drawing, what would make a funny observation, what would make a good post. So, it's the downside of being a writer and cartoonist is that you can never retire. On the other hand, I don't want to retire, so
Right.
the heck with that.
And it's amazing. So I know you do travel a decent amount because I know reading your bio and so forth. So I imagine, as you kind of said with Costa Rica, that you probably get some ideas for some of your content from traveling. So in the few minutes we have left, some of the places you've gone that have really kind of sparked something in your in your creative juices.
Yeah, so we've been talking about, just got back from Costa Rica. It turned out that Benedict Cumberbatch, People Magazine's sexiest man of the
Yeah.
year in 2007 or whatever it was, happened to be in La Fortuna the same time I was. Of course, I never laid eyes on him, but that's the kind of funny thing that I can all of a sudden say, hey, I can make a thing out of Benedict Cumberbatch and me being in this little town in Costa Rica at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and plus Costa Rica is an eyeful. I mean, it's got, what is it? It's
Yeah.
got 15% of the world's biomass in a country the size of West Virginia. So it's just like visually, it was arresting. I was doing all sorts of interesting things, and travel is that way for me. I just love doing it. I've worked. I was on a cruise in Alaska and had a lot of fun writing about that. My wife and I circumnavigated France. What's that?
When was that?
It would have been the summer of 2023. We were on a cruise in Alaska.
Yeah, I'm doing that this summer. That's why I asked.
Oh, cool. Which you'll be on a cruise? Who are you going with?
Royal Caribbean.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we were, oh shoot, the cruise company wouldn't be happy about this. I can't remember who we were with. But it was just, it's mind blowing. And, you think, I don't know how big of a boat you're going to be on. Mine had 3,000 people on it.
Yeah,
and
we're actually one of those bigger ones. We're like, I think 45 to 5,000. Yeah.
So Alaska is big enough that even a ship with 45,000 or 4,500 people on it will be dwarfed by the landscape. So it was a stunner to be up there. So glad I did it. And I learned that if I'm presented the opportunity to have a beer at 4 a.m., a cocktail at 6, and a bottle of wine with dinner, I will take that opportunity. And that's not a good thing. I don't want your listeners to get the wrong idea.
As long as you took the drink package, that's good.
Yeah, we had the all you can drink, which is a terrible idea, and it was a lot of fun. But I gained about 10 pounds when we were in Alaska, and I thought that's like a pound a day when we were on the ship. Mustn't do that ever again.
No, it takes you a lot longer to lose it than it did to put it on.
Exactly.
So, how do you see the next few years of your professional career going? You think you're just going to keep doing what you're doing now until you don't want to do it anymore?
Yeah, well, the end point in all this has been developing an audience so that I can get my book career up and running again. But it's books that I care about and want to write. So I told you I wrote and illustrated a memoir. I don't have an agent for it yet, but as my audience grows for my Substack and with other publications, I become more of a thing that publishers might be interested in. So ideally, what I would do is to build what I'm doing now into enough notoriety, enough followers, enough readers that book publishers will start taking me seriously as a double threat writer cartoonist. I mean, James Thurber had a great career of it. He started late in life. I just want to be James Thurber. Is that too much to ask?
You should just be Peter Moore.
Okay. The Peter Moore version of James Thurber. That's what I want to be.
Or just the Peter Moore version of Peter Moore.
Okay, thanks for that encouragement.
So tell people how they can find you on social media across the different platforms.
Hey, everybody should just look for, if you go to petermoore.substack.com, that's not so hard. It's easy to spell my name. All my stuff ends up there one way or another. And, you'll get the full tour of Peter Moore at petermoore.substack.com, and you'll know instantly whether you love me or hate me. And if you love me, subscribe. If not, have a nice time.
I will tell you this, and I'm sure this wasn't you, but before I got the information on you today, I Googled just Peter Moore. And let's just say I'm glad you're not this one, because he was a serial killer. So I am happy. I'm sure, did you know that already?
No, I didn't know about that one, but there was a major executive at Nike named Peter Moore.
So that's the other thing that comes up. Peter Moore Nike is a very popular one. Yeah,
so he was a big deal designer at Nike. I wouldn't mind doing that job either. Yeah. But there was a while there when I was at Men's Health, when I would Google my name, I was the 42nd most prominent Peter Moore on Google. And it was like, now is that a lesson in humility or what?
Wow. Well, your goal should become like maybe the top 42nd Peter. And then you forget more. Just then you've really grown over the next few years.
Actually, for a minute there last week, I was the 24th funniest guy on Substack. So, wow. And then I went, I told all my friends, hey, I'm the 24th funniest guy on Substack. The next day I had been booted out, and I wasn't even on the list anymore. So that shows you that fame is fleeting, but at least
fame is fleeting. Take advantage of it while you can.
Yeah, I was funny for that one day last week, and it made me feel good.
Yeah, I thought you were very funny today. So I appreciate you coming on. I have enjoyed talking to you, and I wish you continued success with everything.
Okay, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On-Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.